Hey everyone, welcome to another segment of Biologic Science News. I know I haven't done too many of these recently. I've been a little busy, but lately I found some time to be able to line up some of these stories, some of these news articles, some of these papers, and I want to go through some of them with you right now. 'Cause some of them are really interesting. They're just a really cool look at evolutionary history, or medical developments, or animal science. All sorts of that neat stuff like that. So let's get into it. So this first article here, published on Sci News, lion-sized otters lived in Ethiopia 3 million years ago. All right, so opening up the article here, Rhyodon, from fossilized teeth and bones found in the lower Omo Valley in Ethiopia. So here, it looks like we have a size comparison graph. A lot of these look like current species of otters. And here in the background is our Enhydriodon, this ancient extinct otter that was the size of a lion. And then over here, we can compare it to both an anatomically modern adult human and a Australopithecine, which would have been a human ancestor that lived about 3.3 million years ago. Okay, so this is really cool. Just by looking at the size comparison alone, just this graphic right off the bat, you see that this thing is monstrous. Otters are pretty fierce carnivores. Like, you don't want to mess with an otter. It'll do some damage to you if it gets claws and fangs on you. And so to see one that's this big, where it's like the size of a dog, basically, where its head comes up to your waist, super dangerous, super scary. And then if you're talking about the ancient human ancestor, these Australopithecus individuals, I mean, look at this. These things could just reach up and bite their neck and just pluck them right off the ground, pull them right under the water or something. So this is, if you lived 3 million years ago, you were one of these guys living next to one of these guys, utterly terrifying. I don't even know how you deal with that. All right, but let's get into the article. Several species of giant otters are known to have populated Eurasia and Africa during the Miocene epoch, between 6 and 2 million years ago. Among these, the extinct genus Enhydriodon is the best known because its remains, although fragmentary, have been found in many locales, particularly in eastern Africa. The newly described species weighed an estimated 200 kilograms, 440 pounds, making it the largest otter ever described. Yeah, I'd say so, by a large margin, too. Its fossilized remains, teeth and femur, were found in the Shangura and Uzno formations in the lower Omo Valley of southwestern Ethiopia. So this is kind of in a region in the I think the eastern area of Africa, like the Eastern Rift Valley. The fossil sites are a bit north of there, a little bit southwest of there. So anyway, dubbed Enhydriodon omoensis, the animal would have rubbed elbows and possibly competed for food with our much smaller ancestors, Australopithecines, when it lived alongside them 3.5 to 2.5 million years ago. The peculiar thing, in addition to its massive size, is that isotopes in its teeth suggest it was not aquatic, like all modern otters, said Dr. Kevin Uno, a geochemist with the Lamont Doherty Doherty, I don't know how to pronounce that, Earth Observatory at Columbia University. He continued, saying, "We found it had a diet of terrestrial animals, also different from modern otters." So that's really, really neat as well. It wasn't, like a fully marine or a semi-aquatic creature, think like a hippopotamus. It appears that its diet was mostly land-based creatures based on the isotope analysis. And so this would have been a terrestrial vertebrate, a terrestrial carnivore. And in a way, this kind of reminds me of the ancestors of whales and other cetaceans, because their ancestor was also land-dwelling. I think it was semi-aquatic, but of course it came from a fully terrestrial animal. But the ancestral cetaceans were kind of like, think of them like hairy alligators almost, is kind of what they were like. They moved back into the water, became whales, and then similarly you have these giant monstrous terrestrial otters that lived 2 to 6 million years ago. And over time the larger ones were wiped out, or they shrank in size, and the modern otters that we see today, of course, are barely half a meter tall, a third of a meter tall. So traditionally, Enhydriodon otters have been considered semi-aquatic, feeding on mollusks, turtles, crocodiles, and catfish, all common in African freshwater environments. Dr. Uno and colleagues tested this idea by analyzing stable isotopes of oxygen and carbon in the tooth enamel of Enhydriodon omoensis. Presumably, values in the fossil otter should have been close to those of fossil hippos or other semi-aquatic animals. This is what you would think if you were operating under that, axiom that, oh, it's a semi-aquatic animal, it lived in a semi-aquatic environment, it has a diet reminiscent of that semi-aquatic lifestyle. But instead, Enhydriodon omoensis had values similar to those of terrestrial mammals, and it has other big animals from the same fossil deposits to compare it to, particularly big cats and hyenas. So the authors say Enhydriodon, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Enhydriodon otters went extinct in Africa around the Pleo-Pleistocene transition, along with many large-size and ecologically specialized carnivorans, the authors said. This extinction event could be linked to the many geological, climate, and biotic changes occurring in the Eastern African Rift during this period, notably, and this is important, the incursion of early hominins into the carnivore guild. So what that last comment basically means is that as humans were evolving into our own, we were coming into our own, we were becoming increasingly influential carnivores on the plains of Africa. We would have competed with these giant otters either directly by hunting them and eating them as prey, or just killing them out of our own safety, to get rid of them before they kill us, before they hunt us. Or we were hunting their food, we were fishing in their rivers, competing with them for space in riparian territories, and they just couldn't compete with us and eventually died out. In any case, super interesting study, super interesting article, really wild animal. And it's just crazy to think about what life must have been like for human ancestors so long ago.